Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta Ndlela. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast you should be tuning into. Communication and soft skills are crucial for your career growth and leadership development. And by the end of this episode, please log on to Apple and Spotify and leave us a rating and a review. Now let's get communicating with Dr. Laura Graye, who's here to talk to us about the meaningful role of metaphysics. And you may be wondering, what's that got to do with communication and speaking? But you're going to be amazed. And before I go any further, please help me welcome her to the show. Hi, Dr. Laura.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and do a much better job than I did.
Yes. So my name is Dr. Laura Graye. I am a medical intuitive and a metaphysician. I'm the founder of Metagration. Got a lot of metis in there. I am the founder of Metagration, which is a boutique online meditation streaming site that specifically focuses on communication of consciousness and your body, communicating with your body to align it to its highest health and ultimately its greatest alignment of your life and your destiny.
Right. Communication, which means we're going inward, because we always say the first type of communication happens within yourself before you speak to others, before your public speaker, we talk about all the soft skills. Everything starts from here.
Yes.
And how did you get started on this journey?
Boy. So when I was younger, I was noticing that I was picking up. So it first started as a medical intuitive. I was about 8 years old, and I had an experience where I was picking up something going on with a man next to me on a bench. And I must have mentioned it to my mom or something. Somehow it was sort of figured out that I was picking up more than what other people pick up. And I could feel people's feelings. I could feel their organs. It was like my body almost became a whiteboard, and I could walk into a room and identify, whose liver was struggling or whose heart was beating very quickly. And so that was sort of where I ended up kind of trying to figure it out for myself, and a little bit of a loss of self. Talk about communication issues is when you get so much permeability, which my body has that. And I'll get to not the end of the story because I'm still alive, but the middle of the story was that fast forward from 8 to 33 years old, and I was 33 years old when I was diagnosed with osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bone disease, and it ends up leaving me with 67% less collagen. And in that moment, with that diagnosis, a light bulb went off like that I am literally lighter bodied. I have less bone, less tissue, less mass. And so I realized that was how the field consciousness was moving through me. And I was an echo chamber where other people are far more dense. And so the communication really was internally for me, in that I was picking up things, it was moving through and coming to consciousness in my body, because my body was light and empty, and things were vibrating against me and vibrating against the math that was in me, and I was able to bring that to consciousness. And I say that way because everybody is having the universe send vibrations into our body. And what happens though is when we're a little denser, it just takes a little bit more to listen and to understand what that communication is.
Okay, we will get to the communication with consciousness and the universe part. But from 8 to 33, as you said, you had this less collagen. How did you have health issues on a constant basis because of that?
Right. Yeah. So I definitely was not a super healthy child, but I also wasn't a hospitalized child. So no tests had been done on me. But I didn't, there was a whole bunch of things that were somewhat not healthy about me. And it was interesting. We ate an organic, even back then, you know, we were eating organic. My mom was very progressive. And yet I still was a pretty unhealthy child. And so what ended up really being a big piece for me was the amount of anxiety that my body had. And, you know, looking back, I couldn't understand it then, but now when you think about it, just on an unconscious level, feeling as though you are so vibrationally different from everybody is a really remarkable thing. You're not vibrating the same. I had so much less mass and so much less body. And that's a scary feeling to both be different. And also, I suspect at some point I kind of knew, like, I don't have all my body. So that was happening. And then I decided to go to veterinary school. I wanted to go to veterinary school. I really connected with animals. They were easier to vibrate strangely with. And so I was going to go to veterinary school. And I did. I ended up getting a master's in veterinary medicine. And then I went on and got a doctorate in natural medicine and a PhD in consciousness. The doctorate and the PhD came after my diagnosis, because then I wanted to build credibility as to, for everyone, all of these people. It's called the Cassandra complex, people who can see and feel things that are invisible to others. And I really wanted to build the science and credibility to the fact that these are real, even though while we may not be able to measure them yet, they are real vibrations in our universe.
Not only because we don't measure them yet, but, you know, as humans, unless we physically see or touch something, we start to wonder, is it real? And I'm wondering, when you were from the age of 8, basically, and talking about this, did everyone around you, especially grown-ups, believe you?
No,
Did anybody
not at
say,
all.
she sounds crazy? Do you want to take it to a therapist?
Yeah, not at all. There were things, I specifically remember waking up at about 1:30 in the morning one morning, and I knew our house was going to catch on fire. I just knew something was going to happen. And I went into my mom's room and, you know, Mom, I think the house, and she was like, go back to sleep, because I was a nervous child. It's not like she was ignoring me, but this is what she did to calm me down. And I went back to bed and laid there with my eyes looked up at the ceiling. And about 3.5 hours later, the dining room burst into flames. We had a spinning wheel and the wool had gotten too close to the heater. And sure enough, so there were a lot of those things where I would feel or sense something before it happened. But as you were asking that question and you were saying, you know, do people believe it? One of the things that held me to my center, as hard as that was that I kept having the feeling, but love is not measurable. And if love is not measurable, but people believe in it, then all of this can be believed in. You know, these vibrations that are not measurable yet can fall in the category of that, well, they're like love. And that's how I always argued it. When someone would say, like, oh, you're crazy, I would say, well, do you believe in love? Show me the love you have for your partner or your child. Show it to me.
Physically, let me see it. Yeah, that's a very good one to keep you going, because you knew what you knew. And then, as we were saying earlier, that you had all these health issues, but because and now you see that the silver lining to that was the fact that your vibrations were high. When we talk about vibrations, where you said you felt others' vibrations, we usually think of it as, I need to vibrate higher to attract all the life we desire. You know, we talk about it a lot of the time. Were you feeling them for other people, or did you also have more intuition for your own life?
That's such a great question. Well, this would pull in astrology, and I happen to, for those listeners who know anything about astrology, I have 6 planets in the 12th house, and that's those 6 planets in the 12th house. The 12th house is actually the part of the astrology chart in which you it's a loss of self. You can't really see yourself. You're tapped into the collective conscious, and the unconscious. So to answer your question, whether it happened one way or the other, I might have had intuition about myself, but I didn't have a real knowing of myself. I could have a very quick loss of self very easily. I could be talking to you, for instance, and then which was what was happening when I was a child, was I didn't manage how often I was reading someone else's field, which is what was creating the health issues. It's not by having brittle bone that I necessarily was not healthy, because I'm healthy now, but it was due to the fact that I was neurally really doing a lot of threat assessment unconsciously. And so with that threat assessment, your neurons are set in our own bodies to diagnose what's going on in our own bodies. If you set them to read what's going on in someone else's body, your autonomic nervous system receives that other person's information and your person. And all of a sudden, your autonomic nervous system says, we've got 2 readings for livers, we've got 2 readings for hearts, we've got blood pressure coming in 2 different ways. And all we basically have to do is send a warning of anxiety that, you know what, something is really off. And that creates anxiety. And that's the detachment and the sort of disassociation or separation from self.
And therefore, with that knowledge and with that science, when you help your clients, because speaking of anxiety, for instance, there's a lot of people who have that as a challenge. When you help them, do you go back to that science as an explanation and a way to solve the problem?
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's a really good way to take. People personalize anxiety. They personalize it, I think, more than most conditions. It's like if you've got something wrong with your stomach, you have a digestive issue. But if you've got anxiety, I find that at least my clients have some shame around it. You know, this anxiety is, it's really upsetting to me, and I can't get anything done with it. And I'm somewhat embarrassed that I'm so anxious. So I bring it right back to the nervous system, and that it's just a disconnection to yourself, and we got to get you plugged back in neurally into yourself.
So because, as we said, the communication always starts from within. What are some of the other things that you found that people struggle with when it comes to inner communication? Just the things they say to themselves. We'll come to the consciousness and the quantum later, but just on a daily basis, how do we communicate with ourselves where it leads to us having all these challenges we talk about? Because you know, it all starts with the inner voice. And how do we become aware that we are saying those things to ourselves?
Yeah, boy, you know, I promise I'll tell your audience, I did not feed these questions, but I could not have fed better questions. I mean, these questions are just like lining it up for me. So yes, I think it's interesting you said we'll get to, and as you were saying, we'll get to consciousness or quantum. And I got a little bit anxious myself, like, oh, wait, I can't separate those things because I know we live a quantum experience. So I am abiding by, we'll get to that. But in this conversation, this part of the conversation, I know I'll end up, you know, sliding in quantum and consciousness, because we truly are, we are that, you can't separate it. I would go to this, that we create our own reality. And the way we create our own reality is that we project our unconscious patterns out into the world. From my perspective as a healer, I see it as evolution and healing, that we project, we come in, and let's just say that you are the business of Roberta. You're here to be Roberta in the world, and you have a product, you vibrate a certain way. And then what you first realize in your first couple of years is that you've got your first clients or customers that are buying the package and the product of Roberta, and that is your mom and dad and maybe an older sibling. And so you get feedback, like a review, and you go back into your department as you're developing your psyche and your frontal cortex is being developed, and you begin to reallocate things. And that's where it begins to move away from who we really are, is we reallocate. So maybe you have a very assertive department, and that assertive department gets reviews that in this family, we really don't love assertive people. We're much more team players, people pleasers. So you go in and you rewire your natural wiring, and you rewire yourself to be more of a team player, more of a people pleaser, and you get great reviews. And then you get to first grade and second grade, and you move out into the world, and more customers and consumers consuming the product of you line up for these things that in your kind of research and development, you are identifying as positive feedback. And that positive feedback goes into our brain, and we begin to wire and rewire and wire and rewire. What then happens is the things that we originally were wired, they're still kind of screaming out, no, I'm assertive, this is what I want. And so we have to, unfortunately, repress them. And usually we do that with energy of guilt or shame. Those emotions, like all emotions, are energetics. And a heavy, heavy energetic is shame. It's just a heavy vibration. So you take something that you are recognizing is not being a successful part of your product, and you put the energy and the vibration of shame on top of it. And then you move on. And what's easier is now that's happening in your unconscious. You've got the vibration of shame on top of that, holding that down, and you are operating. And what ends up happening is disease and ill health, as well as the reality. What's really cool is those things begin to create your reality. It's called self-manifested reality. And everything, I don't want to go further and further, but this is really important to understand. Every event, circumstance, and person that we recruit into our life, we're recruiting to reflect that which we do to ourselves unconsciously. And just one example. So if you have someone who is extremely critical in your life, you have recruited them and have created that reality as a healing to you, because that means you've got a knot in your psyche where you have a critical voice, and that critical voice is calling and pulling energetically, recruiting the prism of that person to you. Energy attracts like energy.
Even though I'm thinking I want to attract someone who's not critical.
100%.
Consciously.
Yes, exactly. So the unconscious and what you've wired for 25 years, for your first 25 years when your frontal cortex is being wired, that's all in the unconscious. And then, you hit 25, and it's not like that simple. You hit 25. I mean, this happens at 17, 18, but you think, oh, this is what I want. And that is what one part of you wants. But what the other part of you says is, you've got to heal this first, because there's a heavier part of you that has negative speak, negative communication, that we've got to heal for you to attract and create that reality. We create our reality.
Does it mean that you had put a band-aid on that one, and sort of, like you said, you suppress that because of shame, but it keeps coming back? It needs to be really cleaned up, and, since you're speaking of medical terms, because it's like a lot of the time, just as we move forward, we just put band-aid, but underneath the stuff is brewing.
Exactly. And it needs to be reintegrated into your psyche. And it is, you put band-aids on, and then but your reality. And, I've done this SMR work. I do this SMR work with my clients for years, and I have yet to find the system where it fails, where when I'm looking at an event, a circumstance, or a person, and how you are seeing that, the reality is that you are creating that, and that is what you're recruiting into your life.
Can we take a moment to give a shout out to parents? And here's why. A lot of the time when we talk about things we need to heal in our lives, we always go back to childhood and say, you were raised in a home where you were told to be quiet as a child. And I feel like parents do the most difficult job in the world, and it feels like we are criticizing them, and they did the best they could. That's all they knew.
You know, and I think we've got such victim mentality right now. You know, the victim is the strongest archetype. You would think the abuser is, but the victim is the strongest archetype in the collective conscious right now. It has got so much justification and ability to react and respond. And I think the biggest piece is, I know neither my mother nor my father reached into my head and touched my neurons and wired me. I wired myself. I rewired myself based on what my original wiring was and based on my read of what they wanted and needed. Now, obviously, you can have a really strong parent that is critical and you're going to adjust your neurons. But again, if you want to live in that victim mentality, or if you want to heal, then you've got to go to, I wired myself this way.
Listen, I'm not taking away, Dr. Laura, anybody there are extreme cases. There are
Yes,
there are
yes.
outliers. We acknowledging that, but just in general, parents were just doing their best, and half the
Yes.
time, even though they didn't know what they were doing, they were just doing their best. Can we just give them some appreciation?
Well, and here is the really powerful thing: is it is on an energetic level, usually the firstborn, but not always, that a child comes in to actually be the first thing that that parent is recruiting to heal them. So you'll have a parent who is triggered by their child. So the child ends up getting wounded because the parent is triggered by the child, and the parent, this is the negative of it, is when the parent doesn't look at, this is my trigger, not, oh, I've got to get my child to stop being so emotional. And when you look at, wait, no, this is a trigger, this child who's extremely emotional. And the exercise of SMR is you just write a sentence out, you know, my child is driving me crazy how emotional they are. And then all you do is you take that event, circumstance, or person out. So my child, and you put me, myself, or I drive myself crazy how emotional I am. And boom, there it is. And that is the knot in your unconscious that your child has been recruited to show you. Our triggers are the most powerful communicators, and people are living in these lives where they want to be, you know, sort of oming and not triggered by things. Triggers are the things that give us the flag to know what we need to heal. And then once you're healed, then you can be oming and all happy.
And then earlier, I erroneously divided or separated inner work and inner voices with the quantum. So let's go back to that. Communicating with the unconscious.
Yeah.
There's more of that going around. A lot of people are looking for answers, and thankfully we live in the digital age where all the information is accessible. How does that happen, and how do I become aware? You were aware at age 8, and I'm 48 still trying to figure this out. How do you become aware that I'm communicating, or the universe communicating with me this way energetically, or it's just my emotions and me just losing it?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is, again, I can't say this enough, we are creating our own reality. So that universe is your perception of reality. So that is your universe. And then I would look at it as intuition is a clear connection, a clear channel, or a clear bridge to oneness. So you've got intuition, which comes in, and it is when we open those areas in our body. So you have moving through the shadows, moving through any physical stagnation, any emotional somatic stagnation, and then these mental triggers. To be able to get to your unconscious and to be able to connect to oneness, it's like digging through a closet in that way, because what you're essentially doing is you're moving those things out of the way, the physical stagnation, the emotional, and the mental stagnation. Once you move those out, then you've just got this beautiful clear channel. Those triggers and shadow pieces are like junk in the pipeline to consciousness.
And how do I become more intuitive Is there
Yes.
something I can practice daily so that, because there's so much going on, we have to-do lists when you wake up, you worry about this, and is this done? And how do we take the time to just listen to our intuition? Because another tricky part about intuition is that sometimes that voice, what it suggests, doesn't make logical sense to you at the
Right.
time.
So true. So I think I'll simplify intuition, and I really want to preface it. This is simplification to kind of get it into the three-dimensional world. There are 4 pathways of intuition running through our bodies, and that is heart, body, soul, and mind. So you can have the heart is a very creative intuition. Those are things that come through in visions. They come through in feelings. That's your heart. Body is like the medical intuitive, or the experience of your body just knows something. That's an intuition that your body is intuiting something is going on. That's a more of a nervous system experience. Mind, that is the intellectual intuition that comes in. You have it. You've got powerful. I can just read that. You've got a powerful intellect, intuition, and that has this ability to drop down metaphors, for instance, have incredible ideas. If you are a person who has a lot of aha moments, that would be an intellectual intuition. And then the soul, or that is the mystic. And the mystic is their intuitive sense. It does have a feeling of being in your body, but it is just a full intuitive connection to oneness. So those are the 4. And then to begin to exercise each of those, I actually teach a course. I'm teaching a course right now on intuition, and run these 4 pathways. And we have quizzes every week, and little intuitive quizzes where, it's something as simple as, there's a drawer open in my home. It will be open for the next 3 days while the quiz is open. Envision what is in this drawer, and then people will intuit that. So knowing what those pathways are, identifying what your strongest pathway is, and then working on those. Every single person has all 4 of those pathways. And they've just been categorized and brought down to, explain it as easily as possible.
Here's the interesting part, and thank you for your kind words on the intellectual side of myself. Here's the interesting part. Sometimes we have this belief that if you are here intellectually, then you're not in stronger connection with the heart. It's almost like they don't agree, or if this one is too concentrated, then the heart one is not going to be. So it's either or, brain or heart.
Right. Yes. So I think I don't take credit for this, and I wish I knew who said it, but integrity is when what you think, what you feel, and how you act are aligned. And so that's just a beautiful way when you have eros of the mind, eros of the heart, and eros of the body. When those are lined up, I think that is when you're going to get the most integrous intuition. It's like putting a key in a keyhole. Like, it's like you can feel when you just don't have it, and then boop, and it opens up. And that is mind, body, heart aligned.
Right. Because yes, there's sometimes this false belief that if you listen to your brain too much and logic, then the intuition goes out the window. Because like I said earlier, we believe that intuition, like if there's the voice that says, just take a different route to work today, you think that makes no sense. And it turns out you find out later, oh, because there was traffic, there was an accident. So
Yeah,
that's what we've always thought of it as.
Right. And I think we're in a time where intellect, and so, wisdom comes from the heart, knowledge comes from the head, but they both have very different intuitive senses. So you can have something powerfully intuitive come through your intellect, and you can have something powerfully come through, obviously, your heart. And I think we are so intellect heavy, and that intellect isn't necessarily intuitive intellect. It is just more knowledge. If you think about intellect, when we get it, it's consuming versus creating. So when you're creating intellect, you are doing that from an intuitive place. That's a creation that's coming through. Consciousness is coming through you and you are creating. When you are learning, you're consuming. And so that's a really big way to discern, am I intuiting? What am I creating with my intellect versus what am I consuming?
Right. You mentioned shame earlier, and you know, Brene Brown, when
Yes.
she talks about vulnerability, she says, I study shame. And when we think about shame and the feelings associated when you feel shame for, and you feel judged and all of those, does it lower the vibration? Because we talk about vibration. Does it lower your vibration and your intuition? And does it even sometimes lead to some medical issues?
Yes, yes, and yes. So absolutely. So we're going to start with the tribe. And, we're going to go back to the tribe, and that the tribe is looking for a tribal survival. And then you have individuals. And so what has happened in the human brain is that we are trying as best as we can to stay safe within the tribe and then safe within our individuality. And what has been used to keep the tribe safe and to keep everybody kind of within themselves is the vibration of shame or the vibration of guilt. So those vibrations are neurally wired and handed down. So one of the things that happens is to one mindset, this is not a good mindset, but it is a leading mindset, is that you really want to stay at some level disempowered to be a part of the tribe. If we look at, just think about how the tribe tends to attack the one who is, moving in their power. There's like this strange unconscious way that people just, that's not right, that she's so strong, she's so assertive, or he's so strong as he's so assertive. And I'm not talking about just, the egoically strong people. I'm talking about just, the people who are really confident in moving in the world. And so we have wiring, shame wiring and guilt wiring. And depending on how much your childhood is asking you to find less power in your life, is the amount that you will start to run more shame. And that shame brings you down, lowers your vibration to stay at the vibration of the tribe. And then it is just by these like breakouts of our unconscious, because while the tribe wants to stay safe, humanity and each human wants to evolve to a higher vibration. So that's an amazing wiring that we're fighting against.
Because we want to belong. We don't want to be alone. We want to know we're part of something.
Yes.
Mm.
And so there's a cost, and that cost is you to be together, to attune, to vibrate. You come in, there's a great book. It's called, well, it was first called The Four Agreements, but then he wrote it again, and it's called The Five Agreements. And he talks about, there's a virus. We arrive, and we're this bright, bubbly, you see babies and everyone standing around watching this vibrating baby, just so high vibration. And then the tribe is in this lower vibration, and we pick up on that, and we want to survive, and we want to get along, and we want to be connected. And so we look for unconscious ways to lower our vibration. Oh, wait, there's a wiring that's already in my brain, handed down from my father, my mother. Ooh, that's a shame vibration. I know that well. And then boom, I'll just run that, use that to weigh my energy down, weigh whatever power I have down.
Hence, they say that's the reason we don't create the lives we always say we desire or want. We always go for what's familiar, even if it's not good for us.
Yeah. And Marianne Williamson, we are more afraid of our power than we are of our shadow. And I hope that's exactly what she says, but I'm giving her credit for, she said something brilliant like that.
Yeah, our deepest fear. That's my favorite quote from her.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So separates us from the tribe. And it is, and I don't know that it's our deepest fear. Our deepest fear to me is living a life that is not ours. And then our second deepest and more conscious fear is being afraid of our own power, because the tribe sets us up. And that's where it is. I think we're more wired to live the life that we are.
Dr. Laura, please, Dr. Laura, give us some tips on what we can do to be more in tune so that we start to have this communication within ourselves and be more aware of it.
So that's such an individually based question, in the sense that I think obviously paying attention to how you feel and paying attention to your triggers. Your triggers are the most healing free psychology. Like, it is just when you have a trigger, and then, would you like to try it out? Would you like to tell me one of your most powerful kind of lifelong triggers? And if you don't, I've got one myself.
My lifelong trigger. I can't think of one. I know something that I always struggle with, and people close to me call me out on, which is I people please. And so when they say, I don't know if it's a trigger, because now we associate triggers with, oh, someone said something on the internet, I'm triggered.
Yeah, right.
We've lost the definition of trigger. So usually when my closest friends or family call me out, they're like, you're such a people pleaser, don't do that. Or why did you do this? That's people pleasing. Or you shouldn't have done that. Yes. So usually that's the thing.
Let me flip that. Let me ask you this. Are you often, or only sometimes, triggered when you see someone who is selfish, who is not actually taking care of or being thoughtful? Is that a trigger ever?
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
So there's a trigger.
Okay. So we are going to, we'll depersonalize it in the sense of, we don't need to do, your family members or a spouse or anything, but it will be, I am disgusted by Joe's selfishness. So that would be a perfect trigger. I'm disgusted by Joe's selfishness. So in SMR language, you take Joe's name out and you put me, myself, and I in, and you say then, look at you, I am disgusted by my own selfishness. Now, the first thing you're going to jump to is, no, I'm not selfish. Right. That selfishness is the knot of your psyche that has shame weighing it down, hidden from you. And so that is the place where, when you realize I have recruited Joe to show me the pain of how I am disgusted by my own selfishness. And then you heal that by going in, and there's actually a metagration on my site, Transforming Triggers, that you actually go in and you find the little girl who got the message very quickly that being selfish in her tribe was not the way that you got accolades. So probably at 2, 3, 4 years old, there was some place where you just picked up, it could have happened in one split second, that, you know what? Wow, I was either just really commended for being so thoughtful, or I grabbed that other piece of food and I got my hand slapped, and I now know that that was selfish. I'm going to put that and repress it, and I'm going to grow and allocate more and more energy to my people pleaser, and I am going to totally closet, throw duct tape over my selfishness. But healing that and going in and pulling that out of your unconsciousness, because selfishness, when it's aligned, when you look at a child, or when you look at your selfishness or my selfishness, it allows you to follow your destiny. It allows you, when it's not a trigger and when it's not shamed, when it is just you doing you, it actually doesn't come, it's a neutralized selfishness. It's not piggish or egoic. It's just a neutralized, this is who I am.
No amount of therapy could have explained that to me that way.
I know, it's the best free therapy there is, really. Yes, isn't that just so profound? So gobble up triggers, look for your triggers, get triggered left and right.
Because first and foremost, just the idea, if let's say this isn't me, listening to you describe me that way. As I said, close friend, family, if they say, oh no, Roberta has selfishness at the, they will say, no, not her. That's the opposite of who she is, because that's how I've showed up.
Yes, good product, Roberta. Nice job.
My reviews and my ratings.
You've got lines out the door. Exactly. And that is a part of the human life, but right.
That is amazing. Anything that triggers you is at the back. You need to bring that out and heal it.
100%. And I have literally the years and years and years, I have never had it come where that trigger, it is in the unconscious. People can deny it. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you did it beautifully because you got the intellectual intuition. You went, there was an aha moment and you went, nailed it. Yep.
So you write the sentence about the other person and then delete their name, put yours.
Yep. And there's on my website, we're actually making it AI so that you can just write, yesterday I went to the grocery store and this man grabbed a cart and blah, 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 blah. And he was so selfish. And then it'll say, I am disgusted by that man's selfishness and help you through it. But right now it goes through, you write a sentence and just be honest, as triggered as you are. I can't stand, I hate, whatever it is. I really can't stand this. You write that sentence as clear and triggered as you can. And then you take anything external from yourself, the event, the circumstance, and then you put me, myself, or I in there.
One last thing before you go, Dr. Laura. Speaking of triggers, here's one thing that we've always wondered. So that's an understandable trigger, that somebody's selfish or, push me with their cart. Why do people get triggered by good things like a happy couple, a beautiful something? Those triggers don't make sense to us who are observing.
I love that. I love that. So if you have a place where you say, we'll use the word disgust again, happy, and there's a couple of reasons. Number one is sometimes we have an intuitive sense that they're not as happy as they are portraying. So that's one piece where it's just like, that's a lie and I don't like that. But let's just say we really get a happy couple. So you've got to kind of, decide how many people are triggered, because that's really not what it looks like. That's total like influencer energy. And then the other is and that is, again, this is an SMR. So I am disgusted by how positive and happy my best friend is. That can be a knot. Our light can be in our shadow. So you can have, for instance, this is just mind blowing. You can have a child, let's say it's the third or fourth born in a family, and they've had kids. They've got a lot of kids under 5. But this doesn't just happen with third or fourth. It could happen with the second. And the mother or the caretaker are extremely busy. And so the child is sitting there and the child is playing in their power, and they'll be in their power. And the mother looks and says, he or she's happy. I'm going to run and get laundry done. I'm going to run and make a call. I'm going to get on the computer, whatever. So the child learns through the constant study, when I'm in my power, I am left alone. When I am happy, I am left alone and no one connects with me. Ow, I just got my finger pinched. I start to cry. My mother comes running. Wait, when I'm in pain, I get connected to. It's mind-blowing when you see how a child then begins, and especially with women, I believe a little bit more. I don't have this data on this, but with women, I believe there is even more of that, like the pain connection, the complaining and all of that. And that may be, we've got to be less in our power. I don't know why that is, but it does seem like I run into more female clients that have the wiring that says that connection comes when you share pain and disempowerment.
So mind-boggling indeed.
Yeah. So then, sorry, looping that back. So you learn that being happy is something that you need to put in the closet because it's not connecting you to people in the tribe. And then you see that happy little, and you're just like, oh, because you don't let yourself be happy. There's the trigger.
Because when I was happy, my mom moved away from the room, which back to what I was saying earlier, parents are doing their best because there's no time for her to do laundry. I've heard of moms who don't have time to shower weeks after they've had a baby because they can't put the baby down.
And
she was doing the right thing and you interpreted it your own way.
You communicated. And, the other thing when we look at it is happy is a high vibration. We tell ourselves to be part of the tribe. Whatever virus was going on, the vibration that was ever, not virus, literal virus, but the vibrational virus that your tribe and the tribe of lower vibration. So you've got all kinds of ways you're trying to keep your vibration low. So you've got locked in there that high vibration that has shame and guilt because you've made a story about that is going to get me isolated. And they are annoying me because I had to actually get annoyed at my high vibration because it got me isolated in my childhood.
Beyond powerful. Yeah. Dr. Laura, not only do we thank you so much and we are so appreciative of this, where can we find you online? We want to know about the quizzes and how to construct the sentences. Yeah, exactly. We really need this.
Okay, so the first site is my clinical site, and it is lauragraye.com, and that Graye is spelled Graye, Laura, Laura, Graye.com. And that has the medical intuitive course, which is just an intuitive course. It's just called Medical Intuition. That's there. And then there's some downloads and things like that. The SMR is on that site. And then on that site is a link to my other site, which is Metagration. And that's like meditation, but metagration, MEDIGRAYTION, Metagration. And those are meditations. And in that is the transforming trigger. So you can just take a trigger, go in, it's a 20-minute, and you will literally you'll change your wiring. It's amazing.
So it turns out I'm selfish.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't pull it out of your psyche, it actually kind of shoots out of your hip.
And all along, people have been fooled into believing about people please.
Yeah. And when we go into shadow work, one last thing, whenever you're doing any kind of shadow work, what you want to know in the end is that these are all neutralized energies. Our minds just make them negative and positive. So selfishness, when it's neutralized, just has you on your own self path.
Dr. Laura Graye, the medical intuitive, with so much to share. It's mind-boggling indeed. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I just love your energy, and I love our energy together.
Not only do I love it, thank you for the free therapy session.
Absolutely.
Absolutely loved it. Thank you, Dr. Laura. Don't forget, my pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, and stay tuned for more episodes to come.